So far, I've taken 311.5 pounds out of my 1993 2.3-liter Mustang Autocross car. Reaching my goal of shedding 500 pounds requires creativity. One weight reduction opportunity that's often overlooked is sitting right between the seats. This video covers how I shortened an OEM center console and reveals how much weight it removed from Apocalypso. First, I need to apologize. This long-term build is taking a lot longer than expected. Maintaining and modifying my other autocross Mustangs, ballooning parts prices, and a bad back have slowed my progress on this project. I'm sorry it's taking forever. I hope you'll keep following this series because I've got a lot of cool mods in mind. The center console that came in Apocalypso has been painted by a previous owner, and the top panel is from a power window car. But both parts are in decent shape. I don't like cutting up good OEM interior components, so I found a center console at a swap meet that needed repairs and restoration. My plan was pretty simple. Cut the center console and make a faceplate to cover the open end. I wanted the shortened center console to look like a part that might have come out of the factory. And because I want this project to be something other people can replicate, I decided that any plastic filler panels, brackets, or reinforcements had to be made out of the remnants of the cut console. I started by stripping everything off of the swap meet center console. Using a contour gauge, painter's tape, and a pencil, I marked a straight line for my cut using the flat edge of the ashtray opening as a guide. I cut through as much of the center console top panel as I could with a hacksaw. Then I used a rotary tool with a cutting disc to finish the job. I used clippers to snip off the ashtray cover mounts. An air die grinder and sanding disc helped me get very close to the cut line. Some 150 grit sandpaper and a long file got the edges as smooth and level as possible. I used painter's tape and a pencil to mark the cut lines on the bottom section of the center console. Despite taking things slowly, I ended up creating small gaps between the faceplate and the base section of the center console on both sides. It's really easy to remove too much material. Fortunately, I figured out a fix for that mistake. I'll share the solution a little later in this video. I put the carpet in the car and the cut center console in place. Then I used painter's tape to create a base for a template. I traced the outline of the cut center console and the tape onto paper that I affixed to chipboard to make the template. I spent a lot of time sanding the edges of the template to get it to fit as well as possible. There are curves molded into the base section of the center console. I found an area that was mostly flat to use for making the faceplate for the end cap. I cut out the rough piece I needed with the rotary tool and cutting disc. Using a heat gun and a couple of blocks of wood to sandwich the faceplate panel, I got it flat. I taped the template to the faceplate panel, then used the die grinder and sanding disc, followed by a file and sandpaper to make the faceplate match the template exactly. Here's where things got complicated. Because the top panel of the center console had previously been painted, but the base section had not been previously painted, the process for getting the end cap and faceplate one color was convoluted. I had to prep and paint the faceplate, then attach it to the previously painted end cap. I used JB Weld quick weld, clips, and clamps to bond the faceplate to the end cap. That created one two-tone painted end cap that I could then scuff, prep, and paint as a whole. You have to be extremely patient when prepping and painting plastic interior parts. You want to make sure the surface is spotlessly clean. I used Duplicolor multi-purpose foaming prep spray on everything before using gray Scotch-Brite, dish soap, and hot water to thoroughly clean and prepare the shortened center console and end cap. I spent 2 hours meticulously scrubbing every millimeter of these parts. To get the pieces to match the rest of Apocalypso's interior, I used SEM sand-free adhesion promoter and LMR opal gray paint. I reached out to SEM to confirm that you would not want to use the sand-free adhesion promoter on painted surfaces. In order to reduce rattles and minimize movement, I needed to add a rear bracket to mount the shortened center console to the transmission tunnel. I removed and modified a section of the top panel to create a mount that I bonded to the shortened center console. I needed a small, simple aluminum bracket to tie the shortened center console to the rear 2 shifter dust boot bezel bolts. I used a plastic push pin to connect the bracket to the shortened center console. I wanted the shortened center console to be one piece, so I decided to bond the end cap to the base section. After test fitting everything, I discovered the small gaps on both sides. Unfortunately, I didn't get good photos of the gaps. I made filler pieces out of the center console remnants, prepped and painted them, and epoxied them in place before bonding the end cap to the base section. The filler pieces helped give the shortened center console a finished look. All in all, I think the shortened center console came out pretty well. I have very little experience customizing and painting interior parts. There are definitely blemishes and things I could have done differently. But from a distance, it looks like something the factory might have made in 1993. I have much more interior work planned for this car. But I did put the shortened center console in position to make sure everything fits and the new paint matches the dash. I will be using a radio delete plate, a shifter bezel and leather boot, and an HVAC control trim panel when everything gets finalized. Speaking of finalizing things, shortening the center console exposed the parking brake handle mechanism and the rear center console bracket. I could probably get away with leaving those uncovered, but I don't need the bracket and I want Apocalypso to have a more finished appearance. So I removed the rear bracket, used a zip tie retainer to tether the wiring to the tunnel, popped the trim piece off of the parking brake handle, and I had my mom sew up a leather parking brake boot with a drawstring. The shortened center console and leather parking brake boot work together to reduce weight while looking intentional rather than improvised. I spent 17 hours and 42 minutes cutting, sanding, bonding, prepping, painting, and mounting the shortened center console. That doesn't include the time needed for the epoxy to cure. But how much weight did I actually pull out of Apocalypso? The center console and armrest that came out of the car weigh 13.3 pounds. The rear center console bracket and parking brake handle trim weigh 1.34 pounds. Everything that came out of the car weighs 14.64 pounds. The shortened center console, bracket, and push pin weigh 1.73 pounds. The parking brake boot weighs 0.31 pounds. Together, the parts going on the car weigh 2.04 pounds. This creative center console weight reduction mod took 12.6 pounds out of Zone 2. That means I've removed 100.17 pounds from Zone 1, 127.3 pounds from Zone 2, and 96.66 pounds from Zone 3. I've taken a total of 324.1 pounds out of Apocalypso. I'm creeping closer to my goal of stripping 500 pounds from the car. I promise you won't have to wait too long before I cover more weight reduction mods in the next video in this series.